Travis Wayne Goodsell. I went and outlined this with the scriptures so that I can more quickly jump to each scripture to cut this video as short as possible to cover this topic. I can't remember his name. I think it's something like David Barnes or something like that. He's an older Mormon than I am, who trolls those who are critics of the church on YouTube. And so he's attacked me twice. The second time he didn't recognize me under my new channel name, which is TWG rather than Travis Wayne Goodsell, and so he didn't recognize me the second time around. The first time around, he got into an argument with me, claiming that the current administration of the church was the exact same administration of Joseph Smith, and then therefore Brigham Young is the true successor of the church. And he was in complete denial and ignorance of the succession crisis of the Latter-day Church. And so I'm going to go over the office of the president of the church, and in so doing cover the succession process after I explain it. I just remembered I need to put in Adam-on-Diamond, because you remember Christ is to come in the latter days to Missouri at Adam-on-Diamond, where all the priesthood leaders of the past will give their keys to Jesus. Well, we'll explain that. So, Adam on Diamond, and then Amen has DNC 128, 22, and Isaiah. A little surprise for you if you can stick to the end. We could just go and click to the end of the video, Travis. Whatever. Good luck finding the exact starting point. So, we'll start with the Mormon understanding of the office of the First Presidency and how we as Mormons have traditionally understood this because of the current system. We need to go to Matthew chapter 16, and starting in verse 15, Jesus says unto his disciples, the 12 apostles, "But whom say ye that I am?" And Simon, and they throw in Peter, he is yet to be called Peter, he's about to be called Peter, but they say, "And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, Simon, son of Jonah. For flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say also unto thee," in other words, therefore, because Heavenly Father revealed it unto you, "Thou art Peter." When I worked as the curriculum missionary and tried to get some changes made to the footnoting in our scriptures. Yes, remember the 2009 release of the foreign language editions, which have the guide to the scriptures instead of the Bible dictionary and the topical guide? I was a part of the revision of the footnotes to to correspond with the Guide to the Scriptures. And as a result of my work, they relented and said, okay, we will make some footnote changes beyond just transferring or transitioning Bible dictionary and topical guide to Guide to the Scriptures, because that's what all they wanted me to do, was find the Bible dictionary and topical guide footnotes, and if I could find a match in the Guide to the Scriptures, just do a match transfer. Don't worry about any other footnoting. I couldn't. There are just so many errors in the first edition. Oh my God, it was horrifying. And so, yes, this was one of those that I recommended to have footnoted, which is not footnoted. Thou art Peter. No footnote. The footnote is on A for rock, which corresponds to, here is a subtle word play upon Peter. Greek, Petros, equals small rock, and rock, Greek, Petra, equals bedrock. Christ is the stone of Israel. No, guys. No. You need to put in, instead of Greek, instead of Hebrew, Egyptian. Because Peter in Egyptian, as the two eyes of Horus, not regular eyes, which are the verb to see, or the noun, I am one who sees. The two eyes of Horus, the Wajid eyes, are the eyes of Horus, and they too are Peter, but it's the office of Seer, the one who sees with his third eye. And so I just wanted to simply put Egyptian Seer. They wouldn't go for that. You'd think they would. Prophet, Seer, Revelator, Translator? But no, they didn't go for that. Likewise, they didn't go for Mary, which means love. Behold, my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Behold, my Son of Mary, in whom I am well pleased. Mary, in Egyptian, is love. And so these Egyptianisms would help the church, or at least help Joseph Smith. But nope. And so yes, as you sort of caught on, Adam Ondai Amen, and I'm referencing a Doctrine and Covenants passage, and I'm referencing Isaiah. Yes, that's the clue to the little secret that I'll share with you at the end of this. And I'm not telling you where it starts, because I don't know it yet. Alright, so he goes on to say, Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth, thou shalt be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Notice that binding and loosing are the sealing keys that we understand in the church. But in Matthew, he's merging keys of the kingdom with sealing, referring to Peter as a seer. Now, I'm sure that the Catholics had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with this, but we're not going to get to them until after I go over this stuff that we believe in the Mormon Church first. Alright, so section 128. Starting in verse 10. Okay, and again, for the precedent, Matthew 16, 18 through 19, and He quotes it. Now the great and grand secret of the whole matter, and the summum bonum of the whole subject that is lying before us, consists in obtaining the powers of the holy priesthood. For him to whom the keys are given, there is no difficulty in obtaining a knowledge of facts in relation to the salvation of the children of men, both as well for the dead as for the living. And then he talks about baptism and the ordinances of the temple. Well, it's actually just baptism. Yeah, just baptism for the dead here in this passage. Alright, and let's see. Okay. I need to put 124 last. So section 27. And starting at verse 12. Okay, and also with Peter and James and John, whom I have sent unto you, by whom I have ordained you and confirmed you to be apostles and especial witnesses of my name, and bear the keys of your ministry and of the same things which I revealed unto them, unto whom I have committed the keys of my kingdom, and a dispensation of the gospel for the last times, for the fullness of times, in which I will gather together in one all things, both which are in heaven and which are on earth. And so Mormons understand, as Catholics do, Peter, James, and John are considered the first presidency, even though they weren't separated out of the Quorum of the 12. They were the presidency in the apostles, the 12 apostles. That's going to come in, remember that, when we get to the later part, when I talk about section 107, 21, and 22. Keep that in mind. And then remember how we have things running nowadays. And so, yeah, like I said in the video yesterday, don't just assume that what you are told is the truth. You have to find out the truth for yourself to confirm every word. Alright, so in the Joseph Smith history, verse 72, the messenger who visited us on this occasion and conferred this priesthood upon us said that his name was John the Baptist, the same one was called John the Baptist in the New Testament, and that he acted under the direction of Peter, James, and John, who held the keys of the priesthood of Melchizedek. Wasn't he under his own authority? Because didn't Jesus come to be baptized of him first? And John said, I don't have the authority. Shoes, the shoe sandal, the Egyptian ankh, another Egyptian thing I wanted to have in the footnotes. And they rejected. And then after Jesus was baptized, then he went and called Peter, James, and John and the others. There's some changing going on here. Who held the keys of the priesthood of Melchizedek, which priesthood, he said, would in due time be conferred on us, and that I should be called the first elder of the church. Remember, elder is the first level office in the Melchizedek priesthood. Then there's 70s, then there's apostles, then there's 12 apostles, and then there's the first presidency. And then there are potentially others, as pseudepigraphic Joseph Smith teachings that didn't make it into canon indicate that there were potentially going to be 24 offices in the Melchizedek priesthood. Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, the coming of Peter, James, and John never occurred. At least wasn't put in Scripture as having occurred. Alrighty, so this is how Mormons understand administration in the church. That Jesus, before he died, I should put in the Mount of Transfiguration. I have that set for later. Right? Yeah. The office of the key of Moses, I talk about it. And so Mormons understand, as we've been raised in the tradition, that the president of the church is in a first presidency, there's a quorum of the 12, and the president of the quorum of the 12 succeeds the president of the church when he dies. That's how we've always understood it. That's how it's always been. We've never questioned it. We've never done our church history research to find out if that word is true or if it's false. And so Peter, James, and John are considered the first presidency of the church, and we don't think, well, they never really were put in a first presidency. They were still 12 apostles. Even in the temple, when Peter, James, and John come to Adam and Eve, I shocked my mom when I told her that was just a story to teach a principle. She thought it was real history. God. Anyway, so the Catholics, they believe that when Jesus left, he gave authority to Peter. That's why they have the rock in Italy, in Rome, of the burial of Peter, which is at the foundation of the Vatican, the church. They made sure to make it a literal interpretation, so that nobody would dare question their authority. And after Constantine, this was done, because Constantine was the Roman emperor who forced all the bishops who had separate churches. They had separate gospels, they had separate creeds, they had separate nature and character of God, even. And so the Council of Nicaea, Constantine ordered the bishops to get together and figure out one church. And they were able to figure out a doctrinal creed except for who God is. They refused to give up their understanding of who God is. And they had different ideas. Some say it was a man, some say it was a prophet, some say it was half man, half God, some say it was full God, some say it was spirit, and etc. Mass chaos, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And Constantine got fed up because it was taking too long. It was during the summertime, it was hot, he was cranky. And so he said, okay, I'm now declaring who God is. And he created a Greek word, a brand new Greek word he created to settle this argument over who God is to be. And he called him homoousios. And now other scholars say, well, it's similar to this and it's similar to that. He created a whole new word. And so don't try to say that it's similar to. He created a whole new Greek word for a whole new God. And that's where Catholic Christians get the Trinity from, is from homoousios. And they all try to figure out how to explain it. But guys, he's supernatural. You can't comprehend God, right? So why are you comprehending God? You're not allowed to. You can't. You're mortal. You can't comprehend the supernatural. And yeah, that's a conundrum that they don't realize they've been tricked into. And as a result of Constantine establishing the unified church, they then rewrote history to make the bishop in Rome, after Peter's death, whose name was Linus, he became the Pope after Peter. Now, if you don't know the definition of Pope, it's bishop. Linus was the bishop of the church in Rome. He had his own gospel, he had his own creed, just like every other bishop. And so by the time 300 came around, and then the Council of Nicaea, they were all forced to come up with one creed, one faith, one religion, one baptism. And Constantine created their God. And so they rewrote history to give a line of succession to justify Constantine as the Pope. And then they had to rewrite history again after he died to say that he had confessed to Christianity and gave up his Roman emperor religion upon his deathbed. Oh, we had our were they priests? They weren't exactly priests. They could have been priests, but yeah, they had the religious leaders there at his bedside upon his death, and they swore an oath that they heard Constantine say that I denounce paganism and embrace Christianity. So yeah, well, I'm sure we can trust them. Why would they lie? And so yes, bishop leads the Catholic Church. Not a 12 apostle, not a seer, a bishop. We don't teach that as missionaries going out to the world. We just say that after Peter and the apostles died, so too did the authority of the church. We could easily add in, a bishop is not sufficient of a ranking to justify leading the church. Their own congregation, yes. Not the whole church under Constantine. And so the priesthood died. That's how Mormons understand it. But that's also how Catholic Christians understand it as well. And so Christianity, as they broke off in the Reformation, said, we're unhappy with what the church, Catholic Church, does here and here and here, and everybody's split off according to the passage in the scriptures that they disagreed with the Catholics about. Luther was a little more expansive as he posted the whole list on the doors, and thus came Lutheranism after his death, because he never really wanted to form a new church. It was his followers after he died that took up the Lutheran cause. So there's some other problems that are not discussed by the Mormon Church nor by Catholic Christians. James, the brother of Jesus, not a 12, but had authority over the church, as Peter argued with him, but nevertheless submitted to his authority as the brother of Jesus. And we're not explained as to why Peter submitted to him. We'll get to that. Mary, the wife of Jesus. But, it's in that fake news scriptures called the pseudepigrapha, and so therefore it's unreliable source information because it didn't make it into the Catholic canon. Why would they lie? Why would they cover it up? She is discussed as having had extra knowledge from Jesus, because she was the wife, and he spilled a whole lot of extra information to her that Peter did not get privy to. And so when Peter would try to say something to have implemented, she would then stand up, because apparently she was in those meetings, and would say, "My Lord hath told me this." And Peter would be pissed because of his jealousy. And so, thank goodness that the Catholics have removed those as false doctrine. And so, yeah, I told you about Peter. Okay. So the president of the church. This is the scriptural understanding of the president of the church. And we start with section 107. And 91, 92. Then we go back to 17. Alrighty. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood, president of the church, is to preside over the whole church, and to be like unto Moses. Behold, here is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, and a prophet, having all the gifts of God which he bestows upon the head of the church. We see this in the Book of Mormon. Ammon. They released those Book of Mormon videos about Ammon. He tells the king of the Lamanites, or the tributary king of the Lamanites, he wasn't the head Laman. He actually was Limhi. Yeah, it was Limhi. The son of King Noah, the son of Zenith, who left Zarahemla to go back to Nephi to restore the kingdom of David, and restore the promised land of the Nephites. And Ammon had found him, and after he had done with the king of the Lamanites, and he said, King Limhi said, "Oh, we found these plates, the 24 plates of the Book of Ether, and we don't know how to translate them." And Ammon said, "Oh, I know of a guy who can translate them, King Mosiah. He's a seer, revelator, prophet, translator, because he has the Urim and Thummim." And so that's the understanding of Mormons, should be, that the president of the church is a prophet, seer, revelator, and translator. Just don't go back to any of the videos in conference going back to 71, because before that they didn't have videos, they only have audio. And so don't go to the audio of the sustaining of the prophets, seers, revelators of the church, not just in the what's it called when the succession takes place. It's just gone from my mind, but don't pay attention to the list that they give the president of the church and all the others, all 15, but I'll get to that later. In regards to the list, there's one missing. One of these things is left out from the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. Can you guess which one? And so, yeah, Translator. And the church will not acknowledge having the key of the priesthood of translation, or the gift of God of translation. Yet all Mormons, we all believe they can translate. I should know, of all people, if you've known my story from other videos. And so this is the president of the church. 17 now. But as a high priest of the Melchizedek priesthood has authority to officiate in all the lesser offices, he may officiate in the office of bishop when no literal descendant of Aaron can be found, provided he is called and set apart and ordained unto this power by the hands of the presidency of the Melchizedek priesthood. Now, our church has grown, and so the stake president can do this, make a high priest officiate in the office of a bishop. In fact, bishops, when they're called, are made high priests if they are pulled out of the elders' quorum, or the 70s back in the day. And he's made a high priest. But yeah, the stake president can call anybody to be the bishop if they're approved. But presidency of the church, this is the pattern that's supposed to be followed down into the stakes. The power and authority of the higher or Melchizedek priesthood is to hold the keys of all the spiritual blessings of the church, to have the privilege of receiving the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, to have the heavens opened unto them, to commune with the general assembly and church of the firstborn, and to enjoy the communion and presence of God the Father and Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. The high priesthood office, the high priest office. So I need to remind you about what Nelson did in his very first general conference. Which office are the high priests in? Yeah, the elder's office. And as a result, only those who become leaders will become high priests. No one else will become a high priest. Even though the Book of Mormon and the Book of Abraham declares to us that those who have shown works of righteousness are to be elevated to the high priest, to enjoy the communion and presence of God the Father and Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. And where is that done? In the temples, the Holy of Holies. That is for the high priest. Thus, the president of the church is the presiding high priest and has the Holy of Holies in the Salt Lake Temple. It's in the celestial room. It's that center ceiling room there in the celestial room. That's most often blocked off as the doors are shut with that little potted tree. Whether it's fake or not, I don't know. I've never bothered to check. But inside is an altar, and on the wall there's Joseph Smith's first vision, because that's where you see God the Father and Jesus as indicated here. And so Moses go into the Holy of Holies to commune with God face to face. Other times it's at the top of a mountain with burning bushes and dreams of and such. Numbers chapter 12. I believe verse 6 is when God rips apart Aaron and Miriam for thinking that they could lead the church or the people of Israel. Okay, and then 124. And all the way down to 125. I give unto you my servant Joseph to be a presiding elder over my church, to be a translator, a revelator, a seer, and prophet. I give unto him for counselors, my servant Sidney Rigdon and my servant William Law, that these may constitute a quorum and first presidency, to receive the oracles for the whole church. This is why apostles are called elders. Elder Packer, Elder Ballard, Elder Holland, etc. Okay, so that's the office of the presidency of the church. And so now we need to find out, when it talked about Moses, what is the office or key of Moses? And so here's where we go to the Transfiguration in Matthew first, 17. Well, I can just go to view. Okay. And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up into an high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun. Oh, that's similar to Moses when he was white with leprosy. And his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him. Just 2 people? Then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, is it good for us to be here? If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Elias. Elias is the Greek word for the Hebrew word Elijah. Interesting, in the church we separate them out as different people. Wherefore he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud, which saith, This is my Son of Mary, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. So here we have Moses and Elias, and they're with Jesus. And Peter, James, and John see this, and they're like, whoa! We want to build tabernacles, little shrines, to the 3 of you. What was Moses and Elias doing there? Well, that was a prophecy. Here's the fulfillment. Doctrine and Covenants, section 110. Verse 11. And after this vision closed, and they're in the Kirtland Temple, by the way, and it's Passover, by the way, the heavens were again opened unto us, and Moses appeared before us, and committed unto us the keys of the gathering of Israel from the 4 parts of the earth, and the leading of the 10 tribes from the land of the north. Well, that's interesting. What is the gathering of Israel? Certainly it's the 12 apostles, right? No. because he's quoting from Jeremiah. There's two places in Jeremiah, but Jeremiah 23 is the main one. We'll go to that one first. Starting in verse 5. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, so in the future, that I will raise unto David, King David, Bathsheba man, a righteous branch. Oh, rub it in. Unto wicked King David, I will raise up a righteous branch. And a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. Whoa. So the keys of the gathering is the keys of being the king? The restoring of the kingdom of David? In his days, because we're not done yet, in his days Judah shall be saved. And this is what I've been telling you. Even though Moses appeared to Jesus, he did not save the Jews in his days. This is why the Jews do not recognize Jesus as their Messiah, as their anointed one, as their king. You see what we've done here? See how this works? And so I did the video yesterday about the second coming. And so this is the office or key of Moses in the latter days of the president of the church, which was with Joseph Smith. We will get to the succession crisis somewhat soon. We're at 42 minutes already. And Israel shall dwell safely, and this is his name whereby he shall be called, the Lord our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Who did that? Moses did that. He is the Lord who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. He is the King David. He restored the King David. Remember, he went up against Pharaoh during the David-Moses dynasty of Egypt, 18th, which that dynasty in and of itself was a restoration of the kingdom of David. David is the god Thoth, phonetically the same as David, Taut. So King Tut, you might recognize. But the Lord liveth, which brought up which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all countries whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. This is the office of Moses. This is the keys of his priesthood office. To be the restoring prophet, the restoring king, to restore the kingdom of God, to restore the government, to restore the religion. Jeremiah 33 also talks about it. 14. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and justice in the land. In those days shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. Where's the house of Israel this time? And this is the name wherewith he shall be called, the Lord our righteousness. In other words, a title, not name. For thus saith the Lord, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. And it's not want, in other words, he doesn't desire it to happen. This is want for it, meaning a lack of, and they correctly put that in there with or, which don't need to do that. Could have done Hebrew. But anyway. Okay, and then one more, section 103. Starting in verse 15. Behold, I say unto you, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Therefore I will, which means in the future after Joseph Smith, raise up unto my people, the Mormons, a man who shall lead them like as Moses led the children of Israel. For ye are the children of Israel, and of the seed of Abraham, and ye must needs be led out of bondage. What? We're going to be put into bondage after Joseph dies? Huh. By power and with a stretched out arm. And as your fathers were led at the first, like Moses, even so shall the redemption of Zion be. He's getting this from Jeremiah that I just read to you. Therefore, let not your hearts faint. For I say not unto you, as I said unto your fathers, mine angel shall go before you, but not my presence. But I say unto you, mine angel shall go up before you. It's now plural. And also my presence. It says Moses. And in time ye shall possess the goodly land. And very verily I say unto you, that my servant Joseph Smith Jr. is the man. But he says, will raise up unto the Mormons a man. So in the future after Joseph Smith. But Joseph Smith is the office and was the first attempt, but he died. He failed to restore the kingdom of David. He did not save the Jews. Did not rescue the house of Israel. It's a future person, as I've told you. And section 85 verse 7 also goes over that. That's referring to Samson in that passage. One mighty and strong. He will have the scepter of power, which is government authority, as king, the righteous king of restoring the kingdom of David, and he will set in order the house of God. That's the temple restoration after Joseph had died. The temple will be messed up and need to be set in order to be restored to the original order of the priesthood of Ammon. I'm giving you secrets that shouldn't be given in this script, in this video, because we're already at 49 minutes. Okay. So what is the process for succession? If I'm claiming that the church fell into apostasy, as Joseph Smith is saying here, well, how did it fall into apostasy? What are you saying, Travis? 107. 21. Of necessity, there are presidents, or presiding officers growing out of, or appointed of, or from among those who were ordained to the several offices in these two priesthoods. Remember when I was telling you to keep in mind the apostles? and Peter, James, and John being the presidency. This is where Joseph Smith is setting this up. So each office is supposed to have a presidency, not a president, a presidency. And it'd be a little tough because deacons don't have very many before they have to split into another quorum. But a presidency in each quorum. Peter, James, and John are the presidency of the quorum of the 12. They're not the first presidency. Here's how the first presidency was supposed to have been done when Joseph Smith died, was murdered. And the 27th, which is Saturday, 2 weeks from yesterday, is the Memorial Day, Remembrance Day, of his martyrdom, getting shot in the back. Very sad. If you remember Independence Day, the Jewish father of what commercial does he do now? Can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, he's they're on the president's ship plane, trying to escape, and before the blast hits, and he's just sitting there talking about John Lennon, shot in the back. Very sad. All you need is love. David. That was his son's name, was David. All you need is love. Awesome movie. Then Trump goes and ruins it by having somebody put his image over the president who gives the Independence Day speech. So I'm like concerned now as to what he's got planned for our 4th of July this year. As last year he tried to have a parade, military parade. He's already talking about having the military stand in our streets. Book of Mormon warned us, and nobody listened. Alright, where was I? Oh yeah, 22. This is how it was supposed to have been done. Of the Melchizedek priesthood, 3 presiding high priests. First presidency. Chosen. How do you choose? I vote. Is it just in conference after it's already been chosen for us? No. Remember Adam on Diamond. How we've all believed that there's going to be a priesthood meeting in Adam on Diamond where Christ will appear and all the priesthood keys are given to him? Didn't we already get them at the Transfiguration Mount? Isn't that the Christ we're referring to? No. This is the restoration of the kingdom by a man raised up among the Mormons to be the president of the church and the king of the world to save the Jews. That's what Adam on Diamond is. But this was the process for succeeding after Joseph Smith. Of the Melchizedek priesthood, 3 presiding high priests, voted by the body of the Melchizedek priesthood, appointed and ordained to that office. The Melchizedek priesthood have a Melchizedek priesthood meeting, a special meeting to vote. Similar to the Vatican, when the Pope dies, the cardinals all gather together in their little enclave, and if you've seen Dan Brown's Angels and Demons, you know that goes over that process. The Pope has died, and so they need to decide the next Pope, and they changed little Ronnie Howard from Happy Days, changed the book, the original book, And then Dan Brown changed the book to match the movie. The original book was awesome too, because the son who is going to, the man who killed the Pope and then is trying to destroy the Vatican with the unobtainium or whatever it was, he is the son of the Pope who was murdered by him, the Pope having an affair with a nun way back in the day, and he didn't know about it. He was just raised by this nun, never knew she was his mother, never knew who his father was, who became the Pope. Awesome storyline. Ronnie Howard didn't like it, changed it to a different storyline. Anyway, yeah, they vote for their next Pope. The Melchizedek priesthood is supposed to vote for their next first presidency. Not just the president, the counselors as well. But only the president, as I've already gone over, didn't I? Yeah. Is prophet, seer, and revelator. I don't think William Law and Oracle, yeah. They didn't have prophet, seer, and revelator status. Brigham Young and his 12 apostles did not have prophet, seer, revelator, translator status. Yet what are we currently doing now? We have all 15 prophets, seers, and revelators. My goodness, that's a lot of masters to follow. You can't serve 2 masters, but I guess we can serve 15? I'll get to that in a second here with Oaks. And so here's the conference thing that we've completely bypassed. Well, we've bypassed the vote and we go straight to the conference. And upheld by the confidence, faith, and prayer of the church. The Melchizedek priesthood decides succession, then it's brought before General Conference so that the Mormons can know who the new prophet is, the president, and have confidence, faith, and prayer in him. You don't need to raise your hand and give a loyalty oath to him. He's just announced. The Melchizedek priesthood has announced. The black cloud, was it? Or is it a green cloud? There's different colors for the smoke that lets all of the Catholics know at the Vatican if they've finally decided who the next Pope is. And so, yeah, the conference is where this is supposed to be done for Mormons. But now we have TV, and so, yeah, we can have a press conference instead. Form a quorum of the presidency of the church. Alright. So, yeah. Notice in verse 24, it says that the 12 traveling counselors are to be called the 12 apostles. And he says in 24, and they form a quorum equal in authority and power to the 3 presidents previously mentioned. They don't have the same power, because in verse 23, the 12 differ from other offices, thus the first presidency in the church, in their duties of their calling. They are not called to lead the church. They are called to preach the gospel, to set up churches around the world, because that's the key of the kingdom. It is not authority, as Oaks tells us. The president of the church is the authority to lead the church, not the apostles. Sorry, Oaks, it's not you. Kimball chose Nelson first because you had to fulfill your duties in the Supreme Court of Utah. So you are just a counselor. You are nobody. but they are equal in authority within the quorum, is what it's referring to. And they form a quorum, equal in authority and power, as the three presidents previously mentioned. Even though the president is the only one with the keys of prophet, seer, revelator, and translator, they all work together in the quorum for quorum business. But the president of the church is the only one who gives revelations and commandments for the whole church. Section 43. And the 12, the counselors, none of them have authority to be a master, to give commandments and revelations to the whole church. The 12 apostles have their own assignments. They need to stick with it. And they're supposed to have a presidency. Of necessity, there are presidents. Not just the president of the Quorum of the 12. A presidency is required in the Quorum of the 12. So that when the president of the 12 is sick, the counselors can then fill in for him. For the quorum business. Only the presidency of the church is different in that there are duties of the presidency, and then there are commandments and revelations that come from the president of the church. And we've completely lost all sight of that. So yeah, as Oakes, if you've been paying attention, especially lately in his conference talks, where he's talking about we have the keys of the kingdom, and that gives us the right to authority, as we are prophets, seers, and revelators, and he gives the organizational chart. No, Oakes. A prophet, a seer, a revelator, a translator is not administration keys. You don't just get to say, hey, I'm the prophet, seer, revelator. I'm not going to talk about translator. Therefore, I'm the leader. You have to listen to me, I'm the boss. That's not what they mean. They are specific revelatory keys, which can be given to others because they are keys of science. Prophet, science predictor. You do that through the development of theories that can be tested. If you can't test it, it's not a theory, scrap it. Certain science theories that need to be scrapped because they cannot be tested or have not proven themselves. Therefore, they should be put on the back burner because you can't find the missing link. And so, and Seer is an archaeologist. A revelator, an astronomer. Translator, that's already a science key. Linguistics. But confusion has resulted, thanks to Oakes, as at one time, and even still now, there are Mormons who say, oh, I'm only going to listen to the president of the church. Thanks to Elder Benson in his BYU talk about the 1411 whatever number fundamentals of the president of the church. That was just a horrible thing he gave. Just so lacking understanding of the church and the organization and administration and the office of the president. But then he's said, well, is it the first presidency? You know, the counselors, do they have equal authority? Like it says here, equal in authority. I just explained to you, no, that's not what authority means here when it means equal. Just like a husband and wife, are not equal in authority in presiding over the home. Men just say that to women to get them off their backs and so that they don't have to sleep on the couch. There are different roles, and women are shaming themselves when they demand to have the usurped power of a man. And I'm not going to go into the full thing. Already you've assumed certain things now, and you're mad. Don't assume. It makes an ass out of just you, not me. And so Nelson Oakes also caused a confusion because we were led to believe any of the 15 we have to obey. You know, if they give a devotional, oh, they gave a new revelation, they knew a new commandment. We can't listen to our cell phones anymore. Oh, we can't watch that movie that came out because that prophet said so. Don't fall for that. There will be false prophets, false Christs, who will lie and deceive and lead you down the wrong path. That's the prophecy. But yeah, is it only the president? Is it any of the first presidency? Is it any of the 15? Because remember, only Joseph was prophet, seer, revelator, and translator. Hiram, by the way, if you want to know, as patriarch, was patriarch, prophet, seer, and revelator. Huh. And both of them were murdered. And then we have Oakes, who's now coming out, as he's been denied the first presidency because Nelson was first before him. He's now trying to come out and say all 15 have to be in complete agreement, because he gets that from section 124 otherwise. 27. And every decision made by either of these quorums must be by the unanimous voice of the same. That is, every member in each quorum must be agreed to its decisions in order to make their decisions of the same power or validity one with another. And Elder Scott used to talk about how they would argue in the Quorum of the 12. But when the first president came down with the decision, we all got in line. Oh, is that how it worked? So again, how is it supposed to work when we have all these confusions? You can't serve two masters for this reason, because there's confusion as to who to obey. And besides, Oakes is merging the first presidency with the Quorum of the 12. Because he's trying to claim now that the first presidency is the presidency of the Quorum of the 12, even though there's a president of the Quorum of the 12. See the confusion Brigham Young brought? This is total chaos, mass hysteria, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria, I messed that up. Ghostbusters, if you're not catching on. And so, no, Oakes, you're wrong. You lie. You deceive. The president of the church leads the church. He is in the office of Moses. What his word says goes. Now, the first presidency have certain duties separate than the president of the church. You know, like signing missionaries to go on missions. I think that's been passed to the 12 now. But I think they still use the signature of the president of the church. I don't know. Benson was my signature. And he apparently signed each and every single one of them. As what they said. So after him, I guess they got the stamp rather than the signature of each one. I could not sign thousands. Give me a stamp. I even made a picture of my signature so that I can post my signature onto other things. But I've never since used it, but the digital age makes that easy to do. And so, yeah, total confusion because of them not following the rules that Joseph Smith had set for succession. And so, yes, Adam on Diamond is supposed to be done this way, but it wasn't, so now it has to start all over. And so Amen, here it is at 1:11. Adam on Diamond. Adam, we know, Michael. And that's an exclusive Mormon understanding of his archangel name. Ondai, Bruce R. McConkie says, place of, which comes from the section 116, is it? A place where God was, and so God, Amen. But there's some interesting things about that with Joseph Smith. And so Amen, found in two places in the Doctrine and Covenants. First is in section 78, verse 20. Wherefore do the things which I have commanded you, saith your Redeemer, even the Son Amen, who prepareth all things before he taketh you. The other is in section 95, verse 17 at the end. He's talking about the temple. Let the higher part of the inner court be dedicated unto me for the school of mine apostles, saith Son Amen, or in other words, Alphas, or in other words, Omegas. That's Alpha and Omega. Instead, he's using the us and us as the masculine singular instead of the A ending, grammatical termination. Even Jesus Christ, your Lord. Amen. So the Son of the Father. Okay, so now, here's some fun stuff for you. Recognize that tune? I'm getting to it. Just got to go to Doctrine and Covenants 128, verse 22. Brethren, shall we not go on in so great a cause? Go forward and not backward. Courage, brethren, and go on to victory. Let your hearts rejoice, and be exceedingly glad. Let the earth break forth into singing. Let the dead speak forth anthems of eternal praise to the King Emmanuel, who hath ordained before the world was, and which would enable us to redeem them out of their prison, for the prisoners shall go free. That the mountains shout for joy, and the valleys cry aloud, and all the seas and the dry lands let tell the wonders of your eternal King. And we just went over this, didn't we? The office of the first president is as Moses. Moses is to restore the kingdom of David in the latter days. King Emmanuel this time. Adam Ondai Amen. King. Alrighty, So now we will go to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. He's given a prophecy here. He's given the date of his coming as a man. Because John the Revelator in chapter 12 of Revelation gives this exact same sign. And Isaiah himself calls it a sign. Therefore, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Sign in the heavens. Behold, a virgin shall conceive. A sign in the heavens. This is not an actual birth. This is a sign in the heavens. A virgin conceiving, bearing a son, and calling his name Emmanuel. And he talks about Emmanuel in 8:8. O Emmanuel. And then Matthew attempts to talk about Emmanuel, gives the incorrect interpretation, as he claims it's God with us. No. But again, he's referring to Isaiah. Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. And so let me tell you what that sign is that John the Revelator had given. Revelation chapter 12. The conception is different than the birth, by the way, in case you are wondering. I'm sure all women understand that. And so Isaiah was talking about two different signs. One, the conception of the virgin, and two, the birth of the virgin. John gives the birth of the virgin. Doesn't talk about the conception of the virgin sign. He might as well have. He's talking about other signs. And there appeared another sign in heaven. A great red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And then another sign. His tail drew the third part of the stars of the heaven and cast them to the earth. I've already gone over all these, but verse 1. And there appeared a great sign in heaven, a virgin, clothed with the sun. Not a woman, a virgin. You're a woman after you have a child, having been previously a virgin. Virgins get impregnated, have children, become women. That's how you understand scriptures as to who's being talked about in regards to feminine peoples. Those females. A virgin is a woman who has not had a baby. A woman is a woman who has had a baby. And she's clothed with the sun, so obviously it's not a real woman. It's not a real virgin. And the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And then Joseph Smith, Sidney Rigdon, put verse 5 after verse 2 in the Joseph Smith translation. And she brought forth a man-child, a male child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. King Emmanuel. And seeing what we're going here? Do I need to go back to Doctrine and Covenants, section 103, verse 15. Behold, I say unto you, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Therefore I will raise up a child born in the covenant, in the church, in Mormonism, a Mormon, a male Mormon, who shall lead them like as Moses. The office of Moses is to be the Christ. The anointed one, the King, the Messiah, who is to save the Jews, to rescue the house of Israel. And why? Because section 45 of the Doctrine and Covenants, and it shall be called the New Jerusalem, a land of peace, a city of refuge, a place of safety for the saints, Mormons, of the Most High God. The Most High refers to the highest sun in the sky. In the Egyptians, he was Amun. The noon god was Amun, the god at his peak of authority, Amun. The 18th dynasty that I told you was the David-Moses dynasty, the Tawut Moseh. Their priesthood was the priesthood of Amun. When Akhenaten, Amenhotep the fourth or third? Fourth, I think. When he took over, he moved the capital from Karnak to Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten, the Omega symbol. See, I'm giving you some Paleo-Greek here. That's the sign of Omega. Alpha and Omega. Joseph Smith said Alphas and Omegas. Having deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, thus deciphered Paleo-Greek, Alpha is the Wajidai, Seer, Revelation, the foundation. That is the beginning. Alma chapter 32, starting in verse 28. We will liken the word unto a seed. When you get revelation, you then fulfill it. For the Greeks, it became Omega after doing away with the Paleo-Greek ending. Omega was a different sign. It was the Egyptian sun sign. And then they changed it to the Aten sign, which could give a signal to us as to when they decided to change it from one to the other. But yeah, it's the horizon. The sunstone is Omega. It is the Aten. It is both the setting sun and the rising sun, depending on if it's the east or the west that's being referred to. If it's all by itself, it's both the rising and the setting sun. Father becomes the son, son becomes the father, from Marlon Brando in Superman. That was the Egyptian understanding. And I can go into more on that. We're going on to an hour and a half now. But do you see that Joseph Smith knew of this office of the first president? do you see how the current administration has completely and utterly destroyed it? The coming of Christ is not the second coming of the Gospel's Jesus, who didn't exist because he didn't save the Jews. If he didn't save the Jews the first time, how can he come back a second time to save the Jews when he didn't save them the first time? The Gospels got it all messed up. The Jews understood it. Jeremiah prophesies of it. Joseph Smith prophesies of it. He was in that position, as they say. Thus I have called my servant Joseph Smith Jr. to be this man. But he too was murdered, as he knew he would be. And so he prophesied of another who would rise up in Mormonism to take that position and restore the church, restore the kingdom, the government, restore the kingdom of David, which goes all the way back to the beginning, far beyond the David of the Bible, far beyond the 18th dynasty Davids. So that's King Emmanuel that Joseph Smith talks about in section 128. That is whom Isaiah is talking about. That is who we are waiting for. And as I've told you, the signs have all happened. It's now. Was it worth waiting? Did you get bored and say, oh man, this is nonsense?